Okay, good morning. Welcome to the River Severn. Lovely stretch here, just downstream of Shrewsbury. Fast water. What we're doing today is, I've been asked a lot of questions by a lot of people about how do you float fish for barbel and chub in fast water. So I'm going to run through in a bit the way I fish it and what I'm doing. But first of all, we're standing at the head of a lovely fast run, and I'm going to trot through a piece of meat. I've been feeding it with a few pieces of meat every now and again for a while, and as I run through, I'll talk to you about what I'm doing and why we're doing it. So let's see if we can catch an early fish. Yeah, we're in. Okay, so that's the beauty of feeding for a while. So what's happened is the fish have come right up the swim. I'm feeding meat in here at the top of the run, and the fish have come right up the swim to where the meat's first coming from. I'm not sure at this point whether this is a barbel or a chub. It's a good fish, whichever it is. Holding his own in the far, I would say it's a chub. So this isn't a setter. This is exactly what I've just done. Ty's just come down, he's put the camera on, I've weighed it out, and this genuinely is the first cast of the morning. Perhaps it's a barbel. It's really hard to tell in the fast water. But what's happened here is if you just spend a bit of time feeding before you actually fish, you get the fish in your favour. Feed and leave, feed and leave. Just trying to ease this fish into this backwater on the side. If we can get him up in this eddy on the side, then we'll make a bit more time on him. But at the moment, when they're in fast water, you just can't really rush them. And this could be a barbel because he's swimming back upstream. Yeah, it is. It's got to be. Okay, so there we are. River Severn barbel on the float in the fast water, and you saw the great fight, and a lot of that is because the fish is in really, really strong water. But it's a place they love to be at this time of year. Plenty of oxygen, nipping in and out the stream a wee, picking up a piece of meat as it floats by. So let's get him back, see if we can get ourselves another one. Or perhaps one of the nice chub that you often find in these sections of water. There you go, mate. Right, so after that initial mayhem, straight away we up to barbel. As I say, that wasn't set up, that was just because I've been here and been feeding it gently for about the past hour before we started fishing. So let's have a couple of more runs through from up here. I've got myself out in the water, so I'm fishing the head of this fast water. But because I'm out in the water, I can control my float where I want in the water. So as I send it down, I'll talk about it. It's very important. I'll show you in a bit how we can fish from further in and further off a bank. But the further you can get out on these runs with a long rod, so you can control that float down, and it aids you in being able to dictate the speed at which your float is going down the run instead of just chucking it in and letting it float down with the speed of the flow. It's not difficult. A lot of people make it sound difficult. It's not difficult at all. But like I say, always keep that feed going in. Not loads, little and often, little and often. So as that float's going down, what I'm doing with my finger is I'm actually trapping the line instead of letting that line float out, because this float wants to take off. It wants to take off as quick as the surface water. But the thing is, the surface water is quicker than what's at the bottom. So and I'll talk more about making your meat look natural in a bit. But what we are trying to replicate by float fishing in fast waters, we're trying to make that piece of meat on our hook look as much the same as we can as the pieces we're feeding in. So like I say, I'm just tapping that line with my finger, slowing it down a little. I'm still getting a few bites here, I think. I don't think it's all bottom. Sometimes you're going to hit bottom. I'm fishing a little deeper than what the water is. But that's so I can hold back the float, slowing it up, letting that meat flow out in front of the float and look as natural as possible, like one of the pieces that I've been feeding down. Feed a little more. We're going to move now down into the swim so we can fish. We can fish that just as the water comes off the boil, a bit slower. We've fished ahead of the run. We've had a nice barbel out of here. But just for ease for us to fish, it's a lot easier to see the float and to fish that steadier piece of water as it starts to slow down. So we'll relocate. See you in a sec. Hey? Okay. Yep. That's a chub. Normally where I catch barbel, but that's a chub. Come here, lovely. Don't need to net you. Lovely Severn chub. I'm just going to talk you through the setup that I'm using, the way I've got my float set up and what float I'm using to fish in this fast, turbulent, shallow water. Okay, so the float rods are Glide, Korum Glide. You've seen me use them before. I've used them for everything. Absolutely adore them. Dreamcast reel. And then I've got £6. It's Preston floating line, that float line. And then I'll come down to my float. So basically, 4 to 6 pound main line's fine. 4 would be okay in this swim. There's a few other swims that I fish. Unfortunately, they're taken today, so we couldn't get down in them. But there's, you know, you're fishing over to fallen trees and stuff, and you just need that. Sometimes that 5-6 pound line gives you a bit more to bully the barbel out of the swim. If you go too light, you know, you're getting taken in the bush, you snap off. If you go too heavy, then unfortunately it makes float fishing really hard work, and it comes out in corners. So keep the line as light as you can, and you know, that'll serve you better than going heavier. Okay, so down to me float. So basically my float I've got on is just one of our Avons. That's in 4 gram, just held on by float rubbers, so it can be adjusted up and down the line. Nothing special. Really nice float, great for this turbulent water. Nice bright top on it so I can see it well. My eyes are going, I'm getting older. Okay, so that's 4 gram. Underneath, I've got a 3 gram Olivet. So that's an inline Olivet, and it's held with the float, little stopper, Preston stopper at each end. Now there's a good reason for this. So what I want to achieve after that, so that leaves me a gram in weight. Now what I've got after that, spaced out pretty evenly all the way down to the hook link, is number 4 shot. So roughly about 5 number 4 shot make a gram. So that puts me weight at 4 grams. So why have I got all that weight there underneath the float? What? Basically, I don't want big heavy shots all the way down the line. I want to be able to let that meat flow out. I want my float to be there in the water, and I want my hook link to flow out. As I slow the line down and control it, I want the hook link to flow out in front and to just skip along, lifting up off the bottom down, lifting up off the bottom down, that meat as it goes down through the swim, so it looks like a piece of meat I'm naturally feeding. So you might say, why don't I fish a lighter float? Now I've tried that, and you start fishing a lighter float in these faster runs, and basically the minute you start to hold back, the minute it catches any weed, catches the bottom, it's just constantly sinking. You think you got bites, it's just a no-go. So I like a fairly robust, buoyant float. If this had got a bit more flow on it and it was a bit choppier, I might go to a 5 gram or a 6 gram. I might even go to one of our missile floats. I'll show you one of those in a minute. They're great for this sort of water. They really are, especially if you're, as we were fishing before, up the top of the run, where it's really, really hard to see your float. If you go a little under the prescribed weight on one of those, so you undershot it a little, they really do sit up and give you good visibility. But in the situation we're on today, with the flow of the water, 4 grams is brilliant. And then, like I say, under that, I've got my 3 gram Olivet. And basically, that almost acts like an anchor. So that keeps that float there. It gives me a really, really robust setup I can hold back against. And then the rest of my line down to my hook link is just dotted with number 4 shot. So as my float sits there in the flow, my piece of meat on my bait screw at the bottom just flows out and goes down naturally as possible. That is what we're trying to achieve. The hook bait to go through the swim looking as natural as the other pieces of meat you're feeding. Hook length's a small piece of fluorocarbon, 5-6 pound, all round a hook and a meat screw, so I don't have to have any needles in my chest waders. Baiting needle, I don't have to take a baiting needle out. I just take my meat out in my pouch and I can just feed it and keep screwing a new piece on every time my hook bait goes. You could use one of our meat stops, and some people do use our meat stops, and that's fine, and they will hold on a lot longer than a screw. But I don't mind, because if I think I've got a bite and a strike, I haven't got a fish on, I've got the bottom or a bit of weed, that piece of meat's being delivered to exactly where I think the fish are, and exactly where my float's going to come down again in a minute with another piece of meat. So it's almost like baiting the swim as you're fishing. So I'm happy with losing a piece of meat every 2-3 times on the thing. So meat screw is my favoured way of attaching the meat to the hook, or to the hair rather. down, you're just controlling. Yeah, we're in. That felt like that's a barbel spot, that is, all day long. Now I say that, that'd be a chub. No, it ain't. If you do try this though, do try just fishing the float in fast water. It does become so addictive. Not only for the fights like this, but just because you're actively fishing all the time, feeding, mending the line. By mending the line, I mean straightening the line to the float. Well, I think it's a chub. He's giving up a bit easy. You really can't tell in that fast water. I might revise my view again and go back to a barbel. Okay, so he's only a little fella, but a great fight again. In the fast water, wonderful. As I said, trotting down the meat, it's just exciting fishing. Beautiful clean fish. Bar River Severn gold, isn't he? Okay, off you go, little fella. And there he goes. Instead of just using standard meat, what I'm trying to do here, I call it sticky meat, you call it what you want, it's like a bonbon. It's basically I just put some fish sauce on it. I like the fish sauce now, it's new from Sonia Baits, and then I put some hemp and hallie over the top. And all that does is make all those little bits of goodness stick onto the outside of the meat. As it's tumbling down through the swim, those bits are coming off, there's attraction going everywhere. I just think it can turn a 1 bite day into a 3 bite day. It's not gonna catch you 100 fish where somebody else isn't gonna catch any, but just when they're not quite in the mood, it just helps turn them on a bit. So give it a whirl. Or is it? Yep. Shove it. Come on, mate. Another lovely chub, look at that. He's been enjoying the meat. Look at that for a belting chub. Another belting fish. Chub and barbel on the meat. Steady action. Great fun fishing. Beautiful. Thank you, River Severn. Off you go, mate. So another thing when you're trotting a rundown like this, it's a little harder for me where I am now to hold back, but I'm still keeping the rod out there and just trying to feather the line a bit just to slow that float as much as I can. Just to sort of let that meat flow out in front of the float. And then when I'm retrieving, what I try and do, bring the float across and into the eddy and then back up to me. So what I'm trying to avoid by that is actually reeling the float back up over the fish. So I'm letting the bait go out in front of the float. So if you imagine the float's going out like that, the bait's here. If you ever watch a piece of meat when you throw it in the water, if you watch a piece you're feeding in any sort of, I'm dealing with pretty fast water here today, so I'm talking about fishing in turbulent water, in fast flows. If you watch a piece of meat, even when it touches bottom, it'll hold there for a minute, it'll get a few little minnows gudging, it'll start to nip at it, and it'll pick up again with the flow and then continue on rolling down. And basically, by just holding that float back a little, I can't do it so hard here because I'm not out in the water directly above it, I'm to the side. But with it just slowing it down, you're letting this bait flow out in front of the float. So before the fish have seen the float coming over them, the bait's coming through naturally, like a piece you've just fed. What I tend not to do, as I said before, float up the inside. What I'm trying not to do, if you notice, is I don't keep fishing the same run down. So I'm feeding meat on the far side, I'm feeding meat in the middle, I'm feeding meat in this side. So I'll run down on this side of the run, I'll go down on the middle of the run, I'll go down on the other side of the run. Keep alternating. And that's a beautiful thing about a float. When you're fishing with a feeder, that's very hard to do. Because each cast, like, I can just reel in, send it down a different bit. Reel in, send it down a different bit. I can feed more over the other side, keep fishing the inside for a bit. I can give them 15 minutes of feed on the other side, win their confidence again, and then I can send it down over there. So to finish up with another 7 barbel. Beautiful little fighter. We've had a great day. Been fishing the float, just floating meat in the shallow fast water. Just continually giving them a little bit of feed. And just adjusting that float across the flow as we've talked about, and just in depth on the way we hold it back. Like we say, key is keep that meat on the hook, trying to look as natural as a piece of meat you're feeding. If ever in doubt, just put one in the water and watch it flow down. Try and replicate that. Get that right, it's key to catching barbel on the float. Brilliant. There he goes.